my boyfriend of 5 years, and I recently moved from Iowa, where both our families live, to a new subdivision just outside a small town in Texas. We bought our first house together, a place at the end of a cul-de-sac with a huge field full of trees stretching out behind it. We were thrilled to start our new life, and our 2 dogs, basically our kids, made it feel complete. One night, my boyfriend decided to head out with some new co-workers to the city about 35 minutes away. I'm more of an introvert, and big crowds aren't my thing, so I opted to stay home. I love nights alone because I can binge snacks and watch horror movies he'd never sit through. I got home from work in the grocery store around 6 p.m., barricaded myself and the dogs in the bedroom, and kicked off my scary movie marathon of awesomeness. Side note, the dogs get weird when my boyfriend isn't home at night. They'll bark randomly at nothing, which freaks me out a bit, but I've gotten used to it. Our bedroom has one window right next to bed. I usually keep it open for fresh air, but that night, I only cracked it a little. I'm deep into some cheesy 80s horror flick when the dogs start barking. I pause, take notice, because you never know. Flip on the light and look around. Nothing. Lights off, back to the ditz running up the stairs. It's about 11 p.m. now, and I figure my boyfriend still got a couple hours out. No big deal. But then the dogs start barking again, and this time, they don't stop. I slowly glance toward the window. At first, I don't see anything. Then, at the bottom of the window, peering up at me, are a pair of eyes. Just eyes, no face, no nose. The window's low to the ground, so whoever this is, they're crouching. My first thought is that it's my boyfriend messing with me. We sometimes scare each other for laughs, but not like this. I try to play it cool. Calvin, you're dumb. Seriously, it's not funny. The eyes keep staring. Okay, you're really milking this now, fool. Hardy har. Stop it. You're freaking the dogs out. Then the eyes start moving. Slowly, still press a window. I can't see the face. Just one eye now, sliding up as the figure stands. When they're fully upright, it's clear this person is way too big to be my 5 feet 11 inches boyfriend. I freeze. I've always thought of myself as tough, ready for sketchy situations thanks to all those horror movies. But now, I'm paralyzed. The dogs are still barking, and this guy just stares. I fumble for my phone, finally finding my voice. Get out of here, you psycho. I'm calling the cops. That's when I hear it, a tap on the window. It's a large knife, tapping against a glass. He must have seen the terror on my face because a slow, sadistic smile creeps across his. I dial the police, stammering, barely getting the words out. He takes a single sidestep, now fully in view, just standing there as I talk to the dispatcher. Knowing the cops are coming, he takes one deliberate step backward, still smiling that bone-chilling smile. Each step is slow, calculated, his eyes locked on me. He reaches a fence, climbs over, still staring. I see him peek over the fence one last time before he vanishes into the night. The police never found him. This happened a year ago when I was living with my then boyfriend, now fiancé, in a townhouse in the suburbs. It was a pretty safe area, though there had been some robberies a couple blocks away. They weren't common, and I felt comfortable walking home alone at night. One weekend, my boyfriend's brother, Marshall, his girlfriend, Amy, and her brother, Curtis, came to visit. The plan was to chill, have a few drinks, play video games, and relax. My boyfriend had just finished his LSATs after months of intense studying, so he was ready to unwind before the exam. Unfortunately, I came down with the worst flu I've ever had. Sky-high fever, 1 degree shy of needing a hospital, nausea, headaches, body aches, the works. I didn't want to ruin everyone's fun, so they came over anyway, and I stayed in my room. They went out to eat before coming back, so I was alone in bed, watching TV, feeling like death. I slept on and off. Around 4 p.m., I heard the front door open and assumed they were back. I called out for my boyfriend, but no one responded. I figured he'd check on me soon, so I brushed it off as maybe a neighbor's noise or something falling. I went back to sleep. At some point, in a deep, medicated haze, I groggily opened my eyes and thought I saw a figure move across the room. I was so sick and drugged up that it didn't fully register. It was dark, and part of me chalked it up to the TV. I drifted off again. Around 7 p.m., everyone came back, loud and lively. Amy was tipsy and in high spirits, so there was a lot of laughter. My boyfriend came in with some soup and sat with me, chatting about his day while I ate. I asked him to grab a new bottle of aspirin from the basket under the bed. We had a full-size bed with one small basket underneath where I kept extra pill bottles, toothbrushes, shaving cream, and random stuff. He reached down, handed me the aspirin, but his face had gone pale, like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't think much of it at the time and said, "Thanks." Then he stammered, "Come on, I'm taking you to the bathroom." He never stutters. I was out of it, but caught the odd tone. I told him I didn't need to pee and didn't feel like getting up. He insisted, "No, let's go. I don't want to climb back upstairs just because you need to pee in 10 minutes. His words stung, but I figured he was right since I just had soup and half a bottle of water. He walked me downstairs, which confused me because we had a bathroom upstairs. I was too exhausted to question it. He sat me on the couch and I whispered, "What's going on?" His hand was shaking as he pulled out his phone. Then he leaned in and whispered, "There's someone under your bed." Amy laughed, so I laughed too, think it was a prank, but the vibe felt deadly serious. Marshall suggested we get out of the house. So we did. As we were leaving, we heard a thud upstairs. We hurried out, drove away, and called the police. They searched the house but found no one. The intruder must have realized we were onto him and slipped out. My boyfriend couldn't describe much, just that he saw sneakers in the dark under the bed. The scariest part? The police found a small, rusty steak knife under the bed. There hadn't been any murders in the area, so my friends figured he was just looking for a place to crash. I'm not sure how he got in, but I have theories. I'm so proud of how my boyfriend handled it. He's usually calm and collected, and I always thought he'd crack in a crisis, but he didn't. I just hope I never cross paths with that creep again. This started about a month ago on weekends. To set the scene, I live in a large 2-story house that's been split into 3 separate apartments, 2 on the first floor and 1 upstairs. My best friend lives in the apartment next door, and the upstairs unit was recently vacated. I've been here for 6 years with my roommate, our 3 cats, and my dog. We'd never had any issues until recently, when our dog began barking at seemingly nothing in the middle of the night. He'd stare intently out the window, then race to the front door, barking the whole way. We figured he was just spotting a cat or a rabbit and told him to hush. One night, my neighbor knocked on our door, saying he thought he'd seen someone on his porch. He grabbed a cane and tried to chase them, but they jumped the porch railing and ran off. After that, we started checking every time the dog barked at nothing during the night. My neighbor saw a figure dart away at least twice when we looked. We called the cops, but they said there wasn't much they could do. They asked if we had any suspects, maybe someone messing with us. There were some neighbors we'd had to report to the landlord for being loud at 3 a.m. on drunken Friday nights, but nothing serious enough to point fingers. We went back to our normal routines. My roommate works 3rd shift, while my neighbor and I work 2nd shift, though he just switched from 3rds. Nothing ever happened when I was home alone, so I thought it might be over. Recently, though, I got a girlfriend, and because of our schedules, I often spend midweek nights at her place, since those are my days off. That means the apartment is empty at night, except for my dog, as my roommate only has weekends off. Last week, I was at my girlfriend's place. We'd had a bit of an argument, so I was lying in bed, mulling things over, unable to sleep. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with text from my roommate, asking me to call her. I figured she was on break at work, bored, or wanted to chat about Overwatch since it had just come out and I hadn't played it yet, being away from home. I called her, and she said she was at home and thought someone had been in the apartment. I asked why she thought that, and she explained. Our neighbor had gotten home late from work, around 1:30 a.m. He was watching YouTube videos, laughing loudly, thinking he was the only one in the building. He heard footsteps and initially thought it was me, but then remembered I was at my girlfriend's. He wondered why my dog didn't bark, then realized I'd taken him with me because my girlfriend's kids wanted to meet him. He called my roommate to ask if she called off work. While they were talking, he heard a scratchy meow outside his window. He went out and found our eldest cat meowing to be let back in. Our cats never go outside, though they've escaped before. He scooped her up, went to our apartment. Our connecting door is usually unlocked since he comes over often, and put her inside. He told my roommate, who then told her boss, who sent her home. When she got there, she found our front door unlocked, which she never leaves that way. The door to the sunroom, where the cat's litter boxes are, was shut. We never close it so the cats can access them. She checked around and found boxes moved out of the hall closet, with my card game and board game boxes scattered. Not how we left them. Then she heard a meow and found one of our cats shut in the bedroom. She always checks to make sure no cats are in there before leaving, since one will pee on the bed if trapped. Our bass guitar was also knocked off its stand onto the floor. None of the cats are heavy enough to do that, especially not the kitten who was shut in there. Freaked out, she checked the windows. The one in the sunroom was open for the cats to sit in, but the screen was intact. Outside, she found a trash can dragged up against the house under that window, like someone had stood on it to peek in. Our best guess is that whoever this was had been sneaking around again. When they didn't hear the dog, they broke in and were rummaging through our stuff when they heard my neighbor laughing, panicked, and bolted. I'm not taking this lightly. I'm often home alone at night, so I'm planning to get a gun for protection. Before I get into the story, let me set a few things straight. I had a friend who was a twin, and they had a younger sister, but she's not relevant here. Soon after the twins were born, their mom suffered a stillbirth, which took a heavy toll on her. My friend said when he was little, he'd wake up to find her in the nursery, talking to an empty crib, holding full conversations at weird hours of the night. Apparently, this kind of behavior was somewhat normal given her grief. It really shook her, and later she started telling people she was a medium, claiming she had a sixth sense for afterlife phenomena. As the twins got older, she calmed down a bit, but she still believed she had a special gift. Now, for the creepy experience that happened at their house during a boys' night. It was the twins' birthday, and my friend convinced his mom to let a small group of us come over. His mom made plans to go out with her new partner that night, which was perfect because we always got into mischief without supervision. After she left, we messed around for about an hour, but started running out of things to do. I don't know why, but I suggested we try a Ouija board. I'd seen them in movies and thought it'd be hilarious to give a shot. All the guys were on board, so I got to work setting up. Outside, I cut out letters, a yes and a no, arranged them in a circle on a plastic table, and placed one of his mom's shot glasses in the middle. I explained the rules, and we were all pumped to try it. The other twin wasn't into it. He was tired, said he was in a shower and call it an early night, and didn't like the idea of messing with this stuff. We went ahead anyway. We decided to set up a tripod camera to record the table, just in case something supernatural happened. We turned it on, started recording, and sat around the table. We placed our fingers on the shot glass and began firing off questions. At first, they were dumb, immature ones like, "Are you gay?" Or, "Can we talk to Elvis?" Nothing happened, but we were laughing and goofing around. Then the glass moved, but it was obvious someone was pushing it. You could tell by the way it jerked. It was annoying because I really wanted to work, and no one was taking it seriously. We were about to give up since people were being idiots and not given a fair chance. Then things got weird. The air turned cold and the breeze died down. I felt a chill that made my eyes water like I was hypersensitive. I'm pretty sure the other guys felt it too. That's when it happened. The glass started moving on its own. It felt completely different, not like someone was pushing it. It was like it was dragging our fingers along the table, slow and eerie. We all looked at each other, eyes darting from face to face, trying to figure out who was messing around. Every single guy looked terrified and confused. The glass moved from letter to letter, not spelling anything, just gibberish. I hated the feeling, but was too curious to stop. I started asking serious questions. Who are you? Nothing. The glass kept moving aimlessly. Then it had stopped, like it disconnected, only to start again, weak at first, then stronger. Are you a person? I asked. The glass slid to center, then back to no. That's when I knew this was a bad idea. The glass picked up speed, moving in circles, ignoring the letters. It felt aggressive, like it was being pressed hard into the table. We were horrified. A few guys yanked their fingers off the shot glass in shock, but the rest of us kept going, driven by curiosity. Are you dead? Someone else asked. The glass slowly slid to yes. Then, out of nowhere, all the lights and power in the house shut off. We were plunged into pitch black darkness, the silence deafening. Panic set in. We jumped up, breaking away from the table, freaking out. Then the power surged back on, and the TV blared to life. The other twin ran outside, still wet from his shower, wrapped in just a towel, yelling, "Who turned off the bathroom lights while I was in there?" We explained what happened with the Ouija board, but he didn't believe us. Then I remember the camera. We recorded it. I said, we rushed to the tripod, grabbed the camera, and tried to show him the evidence. But the camera was off. We were stunned because it had a full battery when we started, and we were sure we'd pressed record. We turned it back on, and sure enough, the battery was nearly full, like I thought. We hit play, but I'd set it up at a bad angle. You couldn't see the table, just the backs of our heads. We watched until the part just before the power cut out, and then the footage stopped. Somehow, the camera turned off at the exact moment the house lost power. The weirdest part? The camera ran on a battery, completely unrelated to the house's electricity. The mood was ruined. No one was excited or joking anymore. We were just quiet, trying to process what had happened. Even the twin who was in the shower was creeped out and confused. We asked if he'd messed with the power inside, but he swore he hadn't, and I believe him to this day. I never touched a Ouija board again after that chilling experience. What started as a joke turned weird fast. This happened years ago, but it's still vivid like it was yesterday. My eyes are watering just typing this. Now that I'm older, I'm thinking about trying it again this weekend with a good friend. I'm hoping for a similar reaction, but I feel like I'm more mature now and can handle it better. I don't know what to think, but that's my story. Thanks for listening. I've always been a petite girl, standing at just 4 feet 11 inches as a full-grown 27-year-old, and I can easily pass for much younger, especially without makeup. When I was about 7 or 8, my dad bought a small cabin in Livingston, Texas, in an area called Onalaska. I'm specifying this because it's important for the second part of the story, and anyone with kids needs to be aware of that place. The cabin was nothing fancy, just 600 square feet, a single big room, a tiny kitchen the size of a normal bathroom, a bathroom the size of a large closet, and a front porch. The property spanned 2 lots, so there was plenty of outdoor space, but the cabin itself was cozy and basic. The area was an odd mix of backwoods and suburbia, a true neighborhood, but not the neat, polished kind I was used to in suburban Houston. Still, it became a cherished place for me, filled with some of my best memories, including my evacuation from Houston during Hurricane Rita. But that's a story for another time. When I was around 11 or 12, my dad got me a 4-wheeler, and suddenly the little lake town felt a lot bigger. I didn't venture too far, but I went much farther than before. It was common to see me zipping around the neighborhood roads with a pile of local kids piled on the back of the four-wheeler during our weekend visits. This was around 2001 or 2002, when cell phones existed but weren't universal. I usually carried a beeper, but since there was no phone at the lake house, my dad gave me a walkie-talkie with a long range. Looking back, in today's world of constant connectivity, this seems risky, but it was a small town and we spent so much time there that it felt safe. One weekend, I was cruising around the neighborhood as usual and stopped at a peninsula overlooking the lake, a set of docks where us kids love to swim, ignoring the very real threat of giant alligators. Being dumb kids, we didn't worry about that. I was sitting there, taking the view, when my walkie-talkie crackled to life. Assuming it was my parents, I answered quickly. At first, I couldn't make out what they said, so I tried confirming it was my dad. The spot was a bit far from the cabin, but I'd reached my parent from there before. So even though the voice was unclear, I figured it was him. Nothing seemed off at first. I don't recall the exact conversation, but it was weird enough to annoy me slightly. Garbled questions I answered without giving away who I was or where I was. The talk started to feel strange, but I wasn't alarmed yet. My dad was notorious for pranks and goofing around, so I kept chatting, not thinking much of it. Then the guy on the other end said something that made me pause. I can't remember exactly what, but it was enough to make me doubt it was my dad. That's when things turned creepy. Bear in mind, I'd been talking to this stranger who would pretend to be my dad for a good 15 minutes while sitting on my four-wheeler at the peninsula. "I can see you," he said. "You should come take a ride on my boat." My dad had a boat, but this was so out of character that I knew it wasn't him. "Dad, you're not Dad, are you?" I said. "What are you talking about?" he replied. Feeling peeved that this guy was messing with me, I challenged him. "If you can see me, what am I wearing?" He paused, then the walkie-talkie crackled, and he said clearly, "You're wearing an orange shirt, you have red hair, and you're sitting on a four-wheeler right by the swim docks. Why don't you come ride on my boat?" My eyes widened and my blood ran cold. This whole time, some strange guy I didn't know had been watching me from who knows where. It took me about 10 seconds to scan around wildly, kick the four-wheeler into gear, and peel out so fast the wheels struggled to grip the ground. I remember them spinning on the gravel as I fought to hold on, speeding all the way home. I stopped in the middle of the yard, burst into the house, and immediately asked my parents if they contacted me. They hadn't, not for hours. I was in such a panic that there was no way my dad would have kept up a prank. He was a joker, but he knew when to stop. I hate to think what might have happened if I'd stayed there or hadn't realized it wasn't him. Nothing came of it, and my childhood visits to the lake resumed as normal. Eventually, those weekend trips tapered off. But the story doesn't end there. During my parents' divorce, I moved to the lake house permanently with my dad until we could find something better. It was our only option after he left my mom, but that's a long story I won't get into. My dad had health issues at the time, so I took a job at a nearby gas station and tobacco bar to cover our bills while he recovered. Thankfully, the lake house only had electricity, water, and internet bills, so my small salary kept us afloat. I worked there for just 3 months, but those were the creepiest months of my life. Within the first month, a tall, burly man became fixated on me, and he couldn't have been creepier. He had a short crew cut and a slightly unkempt beard and mustache. The first time we met, he stared at me with wide, intense eyes, ordered his gas, and stood there for 2 or 3 solid minutes, just staring. When I asked if I could help him, he said nothing. I worked on the gas side of the tobacco bar, basically in a glass box when open to take money and hand out cigarettes, which I was incredibly grateful for. Several times when this guy visited, he'd leave to pump his gas after staring awkwardly, but the 4th or 5th time, after I thought he was gone, I heard a knock on the glass on the other side of the booth. There he was, face pressed against the glass, grinning maniacally and waving with just his fingers. It sent me running to my manager, demanding a break before I lost it. The last time I saw him is etched in my mind. Impossible to forget. He came in as usual, ordered his gas, but this time he reached to the hole in the glass and grabbed my hand before I could put the cash away. It wasn't violent, but firm enough that I couldn't pull free. As a sheltered 18-year-old, I froze. "I love you," he said, not letting go. I stared, unnerved, alarm bells blaring in my head. "Say it," he demanded. "Say you love me." I just wanted to leave, and in my fear I stammered, "I love you," hoping he'd let go. "Call me if you need anything." "What's my number?" he asked. Confused, I faltered, and he repeated himself. When I admitted I didn't know, he said something that made my stomach churn. "It's 911. He winked. This guy was a sheriff's deputy, the person I'd have to call for help in an emergency, like a robbery or medical issue, and he wouldn't let go of my hand. I nodded, trying not to shake so much that he'd notice. He'd never arrived in a police car, but when I told my manager, she confirmed he was a deputy. After he finally let go and left, I retreated to the back, begging to be moved from the gas station area. I didn't care where, I just couldn't face him again. Thankfully, we moved soon after and I never saw him again, but I'll never forget that leering grin he gave me every time he bought gas. You'd think moving away would end the story, but it didn't. In college, in Galveston, I had to meet with my counselor to discuss some things, which often turned into 30-minute chats since we'd grown close. My dad was there too, as he was taking classes with me to finally earn his degree. During one of these talks, I mentioned on Alaska, Texas, and our lake house. My counselor's face instantly darkened. She'd been a social worker in that area for years, and suddenly my childhood playground took a sinister turn. The sheriff's deputy became an even bigger nightmare. She told me the area was notorious for pedophilia, kidnappings, and other horrific crimes, with entire neighborhoods, including police officers, involved. People who tried to expose these crimes often went missing or were driven out through intimidation. She shared details of several cases she'd worked on, careful to omit confidential specifics, including instances of whole families being complicit. When I mentioned the deputy, her face paled, and she wouldn't say more except that she wasn't surprised. The conversation lasted over an hour and a half, and it was enough to make me swear never to return to the small town I'd once called my summer home. I also vowed never to bring any future children there. This happened back in March 2016. One day, I left my house to catch a bus to my college classes. I wasn't feeling great about my outfit. It just didn't sit right with me, and I got this bad vibe. I'd already climbed a big hill in my neighborhood and was almost out of the area when I decided to call my boyfriend. I asked him to bring me a pair of sweatpants because I felt so uneasy about what I was wearing. Within 5 minutes of hanging up, I noticed a white truck driving slowly behind me. I turned around to see who it was, and the driver pulled up beside me, creeping along at my pace. Here's how the conversation went with this creepy guy. "Hey, you look gorgeous," he said. "Just wanted to let you know. Do you need a ride?" Given how uncomfortable I already felt about my clothes, his comment made me feel like a damn prostitute. I politely declined, saying I had a ride. "You sure?" he pressed. "You look cold." I declined again, keeping it polite, saying I was fine. After that second try, he seemed to give up, or so I thought. I immediately called my boyfriend back and told him to stay on the phone with me until I got on the bus. As I turned the corner to head down the street toward the bus stop, I spotted some garden workers nearby. But then I saw the white truck again, parked right in front of me, with the creepy driver waiting. When I got close enough, he leaned out and asked again if I needed a ride, using the same lame excuse about it being cold. I turned him down for the third time, trying to stay calm. Once I finally got on the bus, I hung up with my boyfriend and called my best friend to tell her what happened. While I was talking, I noticed a white truck following the bus. He tailed us for about 15 minutes until the bus broke down, and police showed up for some unrelated reason. A second bus came, and I made it to school safely. A week later, My parents went to the show, and my brother was at work. So I was home alone with my dog. About an hour after my parents left, my dog started going nuts, barking like crazy. The doorbell was ringing nonstop, and someone was knocking loudly. I peeked through the blinds and saw the damn truck driver standing there. He didn't see me, thankfully. I called my neighborhood patrol, but by the time they got there, he was gone. They kept an eye on my house for a few days after that. I thought that was the end of it, since nothing happened for a couple of months. It was May 2016, and things had been quiet. But then, last week, I was walking to Taco Bell with my best friend when I noticed a red truck driving slowly nearby. I looked at the driver, and guess who it was? The same creepy truck driver, now in a new truck. He just smiled and waved like it was no big deal. I have no idea how this guy knew where I lived or which route I took to the bus. The whole thing still gives me the chills. This all went down when I was in 9th grade. I had matured early, so from 7th to 9th grade, I got a lot of gross comments from guys. It really tanked my confidence. I went from being super sociable and outgoing to shy and awkward. I had literally zero friends. So teachers often checked in on me, asking if I was lonely or showing concern because I seemed depressed. My English teacher, Mr. Z, had the creepiest blue eyes and an even creepier smile. On the first day of school, he had us all introduce ourselves, favorite subjects, names, that kind of thing. But he kept calling on me, even though I never raised my hand and kept my head down. I'd answer quietly because everyone stared and it made him laugh. He'd call me by my name and add "good heart" after it, which felt weird. By mid-year, I noticed he was showing me a lot of favoritism. If he took away our bathroom privileges, he'd hand me a note to take to the office and whisper, "Go to the restroom if you need to." When progress reports came out, I'd have A's on assignments I hadn't even done. I never told anyone because English was a class I had to pass to graduate. As the year went on, I started noticing he never looked me in the eyes. His gaze would drift to my chest, my legs, or the floor, anywhere but my face. When he did make eye contact, he barely blinked, which made me look away. It was so awkward. The first time I caught him blatantly staring at my chest, I didn't think much of it. I'm not exactly well endowed, so guys usually checked out but instead, I figured maybe there was something on my shirt the first few times. But it kept happening. Toward the end of the year, he started asking me to come to his classroom during lunch to help him grade papers. When I'd show up, he'd have a movie playing, and we'd watch it during my lunch break. He didn't teach a class right after, so he let me skip my next class too. One thing I noticed right away was that every movie had sex scenes. He'd ask if I wanted to skip them, and I'd shrug it off, try and act mature. It became a daily thing. Every lunch, we'd watch a movie, and every movie had these awkward sex scenes. At the end of the school year, we watched our last movie. This time, the sex scene was long, super detailed, and painfully awkward. He put his hand on my leg, laughed, and said, "It'll be over soon." He kept his hand there for the whole scene. When the bell rang, I bolted. I didn't say goodbye, I just left. I'm sharing this because I saw him at Petco, where I work, about a week ago. I didn't think he'd recognize me. I was helping a line of 5 customers, while my coworker's line had only 2. He stood in my line and waited for everyone else to finish, even though the other line was basically empty. When I rang up his items, I avoided eye contact the whole time, but I could feel him staring at me. I kept my eyes down, not wanting to meet his gaze. Toward the end of the transaction, he started asking about my life. Did I like my job? How was my family? That kind of thing. I gave short, clipped answers while he stared like he was trying to burn a hole through my face. When we were done, he smiled and said, "I'll be back again, good heart." After freshman year, he stopped teaching at my school. I never found out why. Before I dive in, a bit of background might help. I'm a 20-year-old guy from the Netherlands, and I've been a geek my whole life. Video games, in particular, have always been a huge part of me. Ever since I got my first PlayStation at age 5, there's something about gaming, whether it's the mechanics or the storytelling, that I've always loved. As I got older, I gravitated toward RPGs and eventually found myself hooked on World of Warcraft. The deeper I got into the game, the more I started joining raiding guilds, groups of players who team up to tackle the game's toughest content. The second guild I joined was hands down the best group of people I'd met at that point. One of them was a Swedish girl around my age named Maggie. We hit it off right away. It turned out her mom, who was also in the guild, lived in the Netherlands, so we'd often chat about her teaching me some Dutch while I taught her some Swedish. It was all lighthearted fun. Fast forward to early 2013. That awesome guild had fallen apart a while back, and I joined a new one. I kept in touch with some folks from the old guild, but Maggie hadn't been online much. When she finally popped back on, we caught up quickly. She'd moved in with her mom in the Netherlands, spent the last few months brushing up on her Dutch, and started attending high school here. She was also dating a guy named William, who was part of the same guild where we'd met her. He always seemed like a decent guy to me. Other guild members thought he came off as blunt or even rude, but being Dutch, I chalked it up to cultural differences and didn't mind. By June, Maggie and I had both finished our final exams and were waiting for results. One afternoon while we were playing online, I suggested we meet up in person. I didn't have much going on, and since she'd mentioned struggling to fit into Dutch social circles, I thought it'd be a good chance for her to ease into things. She was thrilled and asked if she could bring William along. I said, of course. Meetups are safer with a partner, and I was looking forward to meeting another guild member anyway. A few days later, we met in Rotterdam and had a blast. I showed them around the city since I knew it best, and we had great conversations, shared some laughs, and capped the day with a trip to the Euromast. While Maggie stepped away to use the restroom, William and I chatted outside. I said, "You two make a great couple." He grinned and replied, "Thanks. I damn well love her, you know. Honestly don't know what I'd do without her." At the time, I didn't think much of it. Just something people say when they're head over heels, right? Maggie came back. We said our goodbyes, and we went our separate ways. A few weeks later, our exam results came in. I'd passed high school with flying colors, but Maggie wasn't so lucky. She'd failed most of her exams and told me she'd be studying all summer to prepare for a redo of her final year. I offered to help if she needed it. Even though I was starting college, she was grateful and said she'd let me know if she needed anything. But after that, Maggie pretty much vanished from the internet. She stopped logging into World of Warcraft, wasn't on Skype, and wasn't even active on Facebook. In mid-August, I asked William how she was doing, and he said she was fine, so I figured she was just laser-focused on her studies. I actually admired her dedication. Then, during my second week of college, everything changed. I was on the metro, flipping through a free newspaper I grabbed from the seat next to me. On the fourth page, a headline stopped me cold. Swedish woman 19 from city stabbed in own backyard. It took a few seconds to register that Maggie lived in that city now and was 19. The article didn't name her, but I got a sinking feeling. I texted her right away. We'd exchanged numbers during our meetup, asking if she was okay. The rest of the day passed, and I heard nothing. I tried to convince myself it wasn't her, but I was scared. That evening, I went on Facebook and started typing her name into the search bar. Her page was already filling up with messages from people saying she'd pass away from her injuries. I reached out to some old guild members, and they confirmed the worst. William had stabbed her. She'd broken up with him after her exam results came back, and he didn't take it well. In the aftermath, a few of us Dutch guild members went to her city to meet her school friends, attend a memorial at her school, and lay flowers at the crime scene on behalf of everyone she'd gamed with. When we talked to her friends, we learned William wasn't the nice guy I thought. He'd been controlling during their relationship, and after the breakup, he stalked her and sent threatening texts. She'd even gone to police, but they said they couldn't do anything at that point. Then she started dating someone new, and when William found out, he took matters into his own hands. Looking back, the worst part hit me when we were at the crime scene. After laying the flowers, we stood there for a few minutes, debating whether to knock on her mom's door to offer our condolences since we kind of knew her too. We decided against it, worried we might unintentionally remind her mom that Maggie's online connections had indirectly led to this. As we headed back to our car, her front door opened. Out came her mom with Maggie's younger sister, who I didn't know was only 6 or 7. I lost it when I saw that little girl, head down, clinging to her mom, too scared to face the drawings and flowers left at the scene. I recently found an article saying William's likely facing 20 years in prison. Honestly, William, I damn well hope you never make it out. This happened a while back when I was in my early 20s. I was working at a small costume jewelry store in my town's mall. It was near the end of my shift, and I noticed an older man, probably in his 50s, walking past my store 3 or 4 times throughout the day. Not all at once, just every now and then. It was odd because our store didn't exactly cater to older guys, but I didn't think much of it at first. I'm not even sure why I noticed him. When it was time to close up, I left around 6:30 p.m. to catch my bus home. It was getting dark early since winter was creeping in. I'm a pretty paranoid person, always have been. Still live by stranger danger rules. Even now, when I leave work, I change into something less flashy to avoid drawing attention. I've got this knack for attracting the wrong kind of attention for no reason, so I try to blend in, covering up and looking as average as possible. I was waiting alone at the town center's bus terminal when I saw him again, the same older man walking by. It made me uneasy, but I tried to stay rational. Lots of people take buses, right? When my bus pulled up, I got on, and sure enough, he got on right after me. I sat in the inward-facing seats near the wheelchair area, and he took the first seat above the steps. I could feel his eyes on me the whole ride. I kept staring straight ahead, using my peripheral vision to check if he was looking, but I didn't want him to know I'd noticed. I kept hoping he'd get off before my stop, telling myself it was just my anxious brain working overtime. When I pressed the button for my stop, I waited until the last possible second. As I stood up, so did he. My heart sank. I started walking toward the front door of the bus, and he headed for the rear exit. The second he stepped off, I sat back down. I had no clue where the bus was going after my stop, and I didn't damn well care. I'll never forget the look on his face as the bus pulled away. I've never seen such raw hate and anger in someone's eyes. It's burned into my memory like a snapshot, and it still terrifies me. I don't know what would have happened if I'd gotten off that bus, but I'm glad my paranoia kicked in hard enough to keep me on it. Back in 2001, my boyfriend Dan and I had just started renting an apartment together, and money was tight. We were both in our early 20s, and I was struggling to find a job, so I relied on word-of-mouth gigs to make some cash. I love cleaning and organizing, so I told friends and family to pass my name and number along to anyone who needed help. Dan, his brother, and his dad all did carpentry work, also through word-of-mouth referrals. Their stories were usually tame, maybe a job at a hoarder's house or some odd cabinet design request, nothing too wild. One day, Dan got a call from an elderly woman asking if he could come by to give an estimate on finishing her kitchen. She said her husband had passed away before he could install the cabinets and countertop he'd bought, and someone from her church had given her Dan's number. He said he'd be happy to help and offered to come out the next day. She pushed back hard, saying, "This needs to be done now." That's why I called. They said you could help me. What am I supposed to do? I'm an old woman. I live alone. My husband died. Dan, who's pretty laid back, stayed calm and explained that I had his car for errands and wouldn't be back for a couple of hours, by which time it'd be too dark to visit. For context, Dan's a big guy, 6 feet 4 inches, muscular, but he's got a soft, not-so-masculine voice. The woman's tone changed instantly. In a sweet voice, she asked, "Will she be coming along tomorrow?" Looking back, that shift in her demeanor and her insistence on him coming right away should have been a red flag. But Dan, feeling bad for her, thought she was just lonely and eager for company. He didn't see anything weird about it and agreed to visit the next day. The following day, we headed out to her place. We brought a small bouquet of flowers we'd picked up at the grocery store, thinking she'd appreciate the gesture. I was excited because her township, about 45 minutes away, was known for its gorgeous old houses and mansions. My high school friends and I used to cruise around there just to gawk at them. Her house was adorable from the outside, gray with white trim, vines climbing the sides like something out of fairy tale. It was a shotgun-style home, so it looked small from the front, with an overgrown lawn that added to its charm. We knocked, and a tiny elderly woman answered, shorter than me, and I'm only 5 feet. She was wearing a dirty nightgown and even dirtier slippers. She looked past Dan, flashed me a wide smile, and reached out with bony hands to grab my face. I held up the flowers to deflect and said, "Dan, and I wanted to bring you these." Her smile vanished. She snatched the flowers and said, "Kitchen's through here." As she turned to lead us, I noticed a brown stain on the back of her nightgown. Dan and I exchanged looks. He made a goofy, grossed-out face, and I shot him a judgmental one. Swatted his arm like, "Be nice. She's an old lady." We walked through a dark living room that smelled like cigarettes, mold, and body odor. Nothing seemed too out of the ordinary otherwise. In the kitchen, there was a closed door about 10 feet ahead leading to the back of the house. A man sat at a corner table, shirtless, hairy, overweight, with greasy hair down to his shoulders. The woman said, "This is my son, Marcus." He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s. He didn't say a word, just stood up and took his bowl to the sink. Then I noticed Marcus wasn't wearing pants, just filthy tidy whities with holes around the waistband. I gave Dan the same grossed out look he'd given me earlier. He playfully returned a judgmental look and swatted my arm. I shot him a serious, "I'm creeped out" glare, and he nodded, getting it. "So, what cabinets are you?" Dan started to ask, but Marcus cut him off, pointing to flowers and asking his mom where they came from. She pointed to Dan, and Marcus grabbed the flowers from her, tossed them into an open trash bag on the floor, and stormed into the living room. I figured he was sensitive about another guy showing his mom attention, maybe because he just lost his dad. Maybe he had some mental disability. I thought, "So, where are the cabinets and countertop you need installed?" Dan asked again. The woman huffed. "I thought you were bringing them." Sounding shocked, he'd even ask. Dan, confused and a bit nervous, said, "I'm sorry. I thought you said your husband bought them and you needed them installed." She stepped closer, throwing her hands up in anger. "So you brought nothing? What is it you do? What are you trying to sell me?" Marcus came stomping back at the sound of his mom's distress, and another man, about the same age, appeared through the back door. Great. This guy was in dirty tidy-whities too. She'd told Dan she lived alone, and now we're facing 2 half-naked guys. The new guy froze just past the doorway, staring at me. Marcus rushed forward, stood between us and his mom, and pushed her toward the living room. Both doors were now blocked by these creepy guys. Dan slid me behind him to shield me from both of them. "We've got to head out now," he said calmly, trying not to escalate things. We heard the woman cackle "ha" from the living room. Marcus didn't budge. "I'll see what I can do about the cabinets," Dan said as we inched forward. Marcus barely moved, still blocking our path. I tugged Dan's arm frantically, pointing to the other guy, who now had his hand down his filthy underwear, masturbating. That's when my chill boyfriend lost it. Dan had learned from his older brother that when dealing with bullies, you say something so wild it stuns them. He screamed, veins popping, spit flying. "The last person cornered me got beat to damn death. I'll kill you and your damn mom if you don't get out of my way. My boys will come and mess you up if you don't back off." Marcus looked shocked and rushed past us toward his brother. For a split second, we thought he was lunging at Dan, who raised his fist to defend himself. But Marcus shoved his brother into the back room and slammed the door. Dan and I bolted out of the house. I think the old lady was sitting in the dark living room, but I didn't stop to check. When we got home, we called the cops. No cell phones back then. They said it was bizarre, but there wasn't much they could do since no one attacked us or exposed themselves outright. We asked around, but no one knew these people or how they got our number. I don't know if they were mentally ill, if the woman lied to lure us there, or what their deal was. It was just scary as hell feeling trapped and not knowing what those creepy, nearly naked guys were thinking. Ever since, I avoid going to strangers' houses unless I really know them. My friend suggested I share this creepy story. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and this happened last summer while I was still in college, living in an apartment with two roommates. One of them, Ally, was from a city about 45 minutes from our school, so she often went home on weekends. My other roommate, Kate, and I were both from out of state, so we stayed put. When summer rolled around, Ally took an internship in her hometown and left, leaving just me and Kate. We both had internships in town, working 40 hours a week, so we only really saw each other on weekends. Our apartment complex was big, with an open layout. Everyone's front doors face outside, no need to be buzzed in. We live on the first floor, and often left our door unlocked during the day when we were home, since friends who lived in the complex would pop by to say hi. It was a Friday, which meant I didn't have to go into work until noon. My internship's executives had morning meetings, and as an intern, I wasn't needed. Kate, though, left at her usual 8:30 a.m., leaving the door unlocked. It wasn't a big deal. She knew I'd be up soon, and it was morning. What could happen? I was getting ready for work in my bathroom. Door closed around 10 a.m. when I heard the front door swing open. I figured it was a friend stopping by to borrow something, or maybe Kate forgot her lunch. I waited a minute for someone to call my name or raid the fridge, but it was silent. A bad feeling hit me. I poked my head out and didn't see anything at first. Then I stepped out, turned toward the kitchen, and there was a middle-aged man standing with his back to me, holding a grocery bag with something in it I couldn't make out. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I yelled. He spun around, looking shocked to see me. He stared for about 5 seconds before saying he was a maintenance guy and that we called about a sink issue. I immediately felt like an idiot for being so harsh, thinking Kate must have put in a request without telling me. She'd done that before. He mumbled something about not having the right tools to fix it and said he'd have to come back later. Then he brushed past me and left. It was weird. I texted Kate right away, griping about her not warning me. She didn't reply, so I kept getting ready and headed to work. Around 2 p.m., Kate called during her break and said she never put in a maintenance request. My stomach dropped. She told me to call the apartment manager's office and report it. I did, but the manager didn't seem too concerned and brushed it off. Our complex was pretty safe. The only time I saw cops was when they busted some idiots tossing beer bottles off their balcony. I spent the rest of the day convincing myself the guy was legit, just confused. By the weekend, I'd mostly forgotten about it. Kate left Friday night for the weekend, so I had the apartment to myself, which was rare and exciting. It was NBA playoff season, and our hometown team was playing Saturday night. I went with some friends to a bar to watch the game. My friends were taking an Uber in a different direction, so I decided to walk home. Taking the long route meant I approached from the opposite side of my usual path from the parking lot. From the street, I could see my windows before walking around and up a few steps to my front door. As I got closer, something fell off. Ally's window was slightly cracked open. She'd been gone since May, and it was late June. There's no way that window was open before. Then I noticed the screen looked wrong, like it had been popped out and put back upside down. I'm not one to overreact, but I knew that window was closed when I left. I turned and ran straight to my friend's apartment on the third floor and called the police. When they arrived, I explained everything, and they told me to stay put until they said it was safe. 2 minutes later, they came out with the same damn weirdo from my kitchen the day before. One cop was holding a huge hunting knife wrapped in a Kroger bag. I wish they hadn't told me this next part, because it still haunts me. They found the guy hiding behind my couch in the living room, clutching that knife. If I hadn't taken the long way home and noticed a messed up window, I would have walked right in from the parking lot. I'd had a lot to drink and planned to crash in my room. I would have fallen asleep with that creep still in my apartment, and I know he wasn't just there to hang out. About a year ago, in June, my family jetted off to France for 4 weeks, leaving me to look after the house and our animals. Our place is in a weird spot, about an hour from the campus where I go to school, a 30-minute drive from my job, and 20 minutes from the main town. My neighbors and I have a few acres separating us, with the closest house a 10-minute drive away. The house is surrounded by farmers' fields, military property, and miles of BLM land, all nestled among mountains. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a house from Courage the Cowardly Dog, smack in the middle of nowhere, with all sorts of strange things happening. If you Google two-story house, you get a picture of my place, except it's only one story. The second-story windows are just ceiling space. There are lofts where my landlord planned to add a second floor, but never did, like they started building a two-story house, and then realized there was no room for a stairwell. We've also got a big basement and an attic. I've lived here for 8 years and always thought the layout was odd. Next to my room, there's this huge wall that connects to the living room, but my room isn't as wide as the wall, so there's just this massive blank space between them. Under my room are the stairs to the unfinished basement. Given the house's setup, it's no surprise we get a ton of birds nesting on the roof. In the summer, they flock to my room's roof because that's when the bugs are out in full force for them to snatch up. Since we feed our cats just below my room, the noise of the birds scratching and scurrying on the roof funnels right into my space. About 2 weeks after my family left, the birds started their usual scratching routine. They do it every hour or so, day and night. It's an eerie sound to hear at 3 a.m., and honestly, it's pretty damn annoying. But then I started hearing scratching and banging noises coming from the wall next to my room. I was convinced we had rats in the walls. I Skyped my mom, and she reassured me it was probably just the birds on the roof. Like always, over the next few days, the scratching and banging in the wall kept going. Finally, I decided to check the closets and basement for signs of mice or rats, so I could get the right traps. I searched the basement. Nothing, no signs of rodents. Then I checked the hall closet, the only thing between my room and the living room. It's usually locked because it's packed with yard tools, my stepdad's shotgun, my archery gear, and a handgun. We keep it locked so my youngest brother doesn't hurt himself. I assume it was locked, but I tried the handle anyway and it opened. I figured maybe my stepdad left it unlocked in case I needed a gun to protect myself while they were gone. When I opened the closet, the first thing I noticed was that all the tools were pushed to one side and a section of the closet wall was missing. I was freaking the hell out. I called my best friend and her dad to come check it out. I thought about calling the police, but since I live so far from everything, I figured a hole in my closet wall probably wasn't enough to get them out here. My best friend's dad and her brother showed up and used flashlights to peer into the hole. They didn't see anything too strange at first, so her dad got on his hands and knees and crawled inside. When he came out, his face was pure horror. He told us he found a dirty mattress, a pair of men's jeans, chicken feathers scattered everywhere, and a half-eaten Walmart rotisserie chicken. He called the police, who searched the entire house and found no one and nothing else out of the ordinary. My friend's dad nailed a slab of wood over a hole, and I had all the locks changed. That creepy compartment in the closet has been sealed up since. The scariest part? I work during the day and leave the house unlocked most of the time. So whoever was living in there could have come and gone as they pleased until I was home at night. We have 8 dogs. That's why my family needed me to stay home. And I never heard any of them bark during the time the banging started. That means whoever this guy was, he'd probably been in the house long enough for the dogs to get used to him. I live in a decent-sized Midwest city, about 35 minutes north of my hometown. My place is in one of those stereotypical, not-so-great parts of town, but it's fine by me, rent's cheap, and my neighbors are awesome. I share the house with my best friend and his husband, who are high-ranking Buddhist monks. Believe it or not, they travel a ton, so I'm left alone in the house for about 6 months out of the year. For the past month or so, I've been dealing with some really weird shit. Not paranormal, but someone's definitely messing with me. A few weeks back, 2 of my tires got slashed. Okay, fine, whatever. I've got insurance and roadside assistance. But a few days later, someone smashed in my car window. I drive a little baby Kia Soul, and when I went out to check it, I saw the word bitch spray painted across the back. I didn't notice it right away, but the street lamp made it glaringly obvious the next morning. Needless to say, I was pissed. The thing is, I don't have enemies. I've got maybe 5 or 6 friends I hang out with every week or 2, and other than that, I'm either at work or home. So I went to work that day, smashed window and all, and slogged to the longest damn day of my life. I work 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Around 1 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number with a bunch of laughing emojis. I didn't think much of it. 2016 was peak random text era with Facebook, Tinder, and all that. So I went home without too much worry and poured myself some wine because, holy hell, it had been a shitty day. It wasn't until about 8 p.m. that I started getting really freaked out. That same random number had been texting me on and off all day, but I hadn't responded. Once I was home alone, I got a message from them saying, "You look so pretty and relaxed. I hope you enjoy that book." I was on my 3rd glass of wine, reading a book at the time, so I was absolutely terrified. I called my best friend. He's ex-military and scary as hell. He's been staying with me for a few days now, and he's the only one responding to those creepy texts. The messages stopped for a day or 2, but now, as I'm writing this, we're sitting in my bedroom, and we just heard someone knock on my door. It's 11:18 p.m. on a Tuesday. My friend went to check, gun in hand, and as soon as he left my room, someone knocked on my window a few times. I'm honestly not sure what to do now. My best friend can't stay here for weeks, and my other friend won't be back for another 3 months. Update. I called the police on my way to work today and plan to talk to them this afternoon. Update. I went to the police station last night after work and gave them all the details. Since there's been property damage and the possibility of this person being in or around my house, they said it's now an active investigation. I tried Googling the number, but nothing came up since it's a cell phone, and I'm not sure if those are public. Facebook didn't turn up anything either. After reading through a ton of private messages and comments, I tried to pick apart my life to figure out who this could be. I've narrowed it down to one person and gave their name to the police. Hopefully, this ends soon because I'm ready to move on and not be scared shitless in my own home. Thanks to everyone for the kind words and great suggestions. I'll let you know if anything comes up. Update. After digging through my life like I mentioned, I think I've pinned it down to someone I had a no-strings-attached relationship with about 4.5 years ago. He tried to contact me 6 or 7 months back, but I wasn't interested in letting him back into my life. The creepy thing is, he not only knows where I live now, but also where I used to live, my parents' house, because he's my mom's next-door neighbor. The police haven't been much help so far, and I'm not sure what to do. If it is him, I'm not just scared for myself, but for my mom too. For the past few weeks, my sister has been complaining about hearing what she calls a phantom radio coming from her closet. She says it's an on and off thing throughout the day when the house is really quiet, but at night, it's almost constant. Sometimes it plays music. Nothing she can pin down exactly, but she thinks it's kind of like old-timey jazz with trumpet or saxophone melodies. Other times, she swears she hears talking, like at a radio show. She says there's definitely a man's voice, sounding like he's having a conversation with someone, but she can't make out the words. Our rooms are set up so that our closets share a wall. We both torn through our closets, top to bottom, looking for anything that could be causing it. Maybe an old battery-powered MP3 player or radio. But there's nothing like that in either of our closets. I can't hear anything from my side, but when I'm in her room, I've definitely heard it. We can trace the noise to her closet, but it never gets louder or clearer no matter how close we get. She says when she gets too close, it just stops, only to start up again when she moves away. It's been keeping her up at night, and she started crashing on the living room couch some nights because the noise is relentless. Just when she gets used to the music or the talking and starts to tune out to fall asleep, it changes and jolts her awake. She says it's like it knows exactly when to switch to keep her from sleeping. Last night, she slept in my room with me. We're two grown women. We haven't shared a bed in at least 15 years. But around 2:45 a.m., she burst into my room and dove into my bed, shaking and crying, more terrified than I've ever seen her. She said she'd been in her room, trying to sleep because, for the first time in a week, it was quiet. She was just about to drift off when the noise started again. This time, it was the talking, out of reflex, or maybe just sheer irritation. She glanced over to the corner of her room and caught sight of a dark shadow. She said the moment she saw it, it either moved or vanished. She couldn't tell if it was inside her room or outside her window. We have huge floor-to-ceiling windows on one wall of our rooms, and she couldn't figure out which side of the glass it was on. As soon as she told me, we peeked out my window, which is about 5 feet from hers, but we didn't see anyone or anything. We're pretty sure if someone was outside, we'd have heard them crunching through the leaves and sticks around our windows. Plus, there wasn't enough time for anyone to get away from the house without us spotting them. Our house sits on a big lot with a lot of open land, so there's nowhere for someone to hide nearby. I don't know what to do or say to help her. I haven't experienced anything myself except hearing the radio noise when I'm in her room. As far as I know, nothing weird has happened in other parts of the house. I'm a skeptic by nature, so I'm inclined to think her mind was playing tricks on her last night, but she's absolutely certain about what she saw. I have no explanation for the radio noises. Has anyone heard of anything like this happening? Or does anyone have ideas about what we should do? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. In August, I moved into my first apartment. I just graduated from university, landed a job as a teacher, and was starting to figure out this whole adulting thing. I moved in with a longtime friend, and we had zero complaints about our apartment complex. It's really nice, not in the greatest part of town, but it's like a hidden gem. The complex is well maintained, clean, and the other residents have been nothing but friendly. If you live here, you get a remote to open the gate of your choice. If you're a visitor, you have to use a directory at the entrance to find the resident's name, listed as last name, first initial. It calls the resident's phone, and they can choose to talk to the person, let them in by entering a key code on their phone, or hang up to keep the gate closed. Honestly, I think this system probably saved me from the mess I got myself into. One night in October, I was driving home from my fiance's place. It was late, probably close to 2 a.m. I just got off the freeway and was stopped at a traffic light, waiting to turn left. I was in the left turn lane, and there was one other car 2 lanes over in the right turn lane. When the light turned to a green arrow, I made my left turn, and the other car would have been in the right turn lane, swerved across 2 lanes to follow me. I thought it was weird, but I figured they might be lost, so I tried not to dwell on it. I kept driving, about to make a right turn into my neighborhood, and I was unnerved to see the car turning behind me. Still, I brushed it off thinking they probably lived nearby. They were driving a bit too close for comfort, but I told myself it was just my anxiety talking. I got high anxiety, so I figured my brain was overreacting. I remembered hearing that if you think someone's following you, you should make a series of right turns to form a square and see if they stick with you. But I talked myself out of it. I wish I hadn't. I sped up a little, clicked my remote to open the gate, and pulled into the complex. Again, I convinced myself it was fine. Maybe they lived here too, right? The gate opens on the opposite side of the apartments, so you have to drive through the whole complex to get to my building. I drove through quickly, ready to loop back out if the car was still behind me. But when I glanced in my rearview mirror, I didn't see any headlights following me. I laughed at myself for being so paranoid and pulled into my parking lot. As I parked and got ready to get out, I took one last look and froze. The car that had been following me was back, parked in an unreserved spot a little ways down from mine, with its headlights off. I knew I should have started my car and driven away. I knew there were a million smarter things I could have done, but in a panic, I jumped out, sprinted up the stairs, and locked myself in my apartment, double bolting the door. I grabbed a knife, ran to my room, and called my fiancée. Outside, I heard shouting, which is rare for a quiet complex. I didn't catch what they were saying. I was too focused on explaining everything to my fiancée. Then I heard more voices yelling, and suddenly it went quiet. Dread hit me like a wave. My knees were shaking so bad I could barely stand, and I was trying not to cry, so I could stay alert in case someone tried to break in. My fiancé made it to my place in record time, armed with a baseball bat to help calm my nerves. He stayed the night, and I slept with the lights on. I couldn't shake the sound of the shouting. It was clear they were calling for someone, and I was pretty sure it was me. I figured the other voice was another resident telling them to shut up, given the early hour. I thought the whole thing was over until I went downstairs the next morning and found one of my tires slashed to ribbons. Then I realized I had left some mail with my name on it in the car in my rush to get out the night before. I didn't think much of it at the time. I got my tire fixed and tried to put the whole thing out of my mind. But a few days later, I started getting calls from the directory at the front of the complex, asking to be let in. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I answered and asked who it was. Silence. I hung up and didn't let them in. They called again. Same thing. And again. It kept happening for days, obsessively. Finally, I snapped into the phone, demanding to know who they were. A man answered, claiming he lived in the complex and had lost his key. He said he lived in the apartment next to mine. I knew the family next door, a woman with 4 kids, no man. And if he really lived here, he could have called his own number to open the gate. I told him I didn't believe him and hung up just as he started yelling at me to let him in. The calls kept coming. The next day, I marched to the complex office and had them remove my number from the directory. The man couldn't call me anymore, and I finally felt some peace. I told the office about the guy who damaged my car, and they beefed up security patrols for a few months. As anticlimactic as it sounds, that was the last I heard from the creep. Looking back, I know I screwed up by ignoring my gut when it told me something was wrong. I let someone follow me, learn my name, and harass me for weeks before I finally did something about it. I'm just grateful for my fiancé and the apartment staff for helping me put an end to it. For the past year and 9 months, I've been living alone 9 hours away from home because of my job. I'm not the most outgoing person. Aside from my gym manager and a few stray cats, I haven't made any friends in this city. I'm usually okay with being on my own, but after nearly 2 years of solitude, and with Ramadan approaching, a time that's usually festive and family-oriented in my country, even I started feeling a bit lonely. Yesterday afternoon, as I was about to leave work, I dreaded returning to my empty apartment. I'd been thinking for weeks about getting a flatmate or moving in with one, so I decided it might not be a bad idea. I pulled out my phone, found a few rental ads, and saved some numbers. Once I got home, I called one of the listings I'd saved under Meaty Rent. Meaty was supposedly the landlord's name, renting out a still available room in his 2-bedroom flat. He sounded like a decent guy over the phone, and we agreed to meet near the supermarket in a few minutes since I couldn't quite pinpoint the flat's location. Still in my office clothes, I headed out and was at the supermarket 5 minutes later. 15 minutes passed, and there was no sign of Meaty. I called him again to let him know I was still there, and he said he was on his way. Soon after, a guy showed up, greeting me with this over-the-top enthusiasm, like you'd greet an old friend you hadn't seen in years. He started making small talk, casually asking questions I figured any landlord might ask. "You're not from around here, are you? Are you a student? What do you do? Where are you from?" I look younger than I am, so I thought he was just being thorough, but he felt a bit pushy. I brushed it off. After some awkward back and forth, I asked if we could go see the flat. His smile flickered into a brief, curious frown before he snapped back to his overly cheerful demeanor and said, "Yes, of course." I followed him, and as we turned the corner, he gestured to an old Renault 19. I had no idea he'd driven. I'd assumed we were walking since the flat was supposed to be close to the supermarket. I was caught off guard. I'm a ridiculously trusting person, and saying no to people is practically a phobia, but I hesitated to get in the car. In my conservative society, it's highly inappropriate for a young woman to get into a car alone with a random guy, and I'm sure he knew that too. He noticed my unease, but still urged me to get in. Unable to say no, I reluctantly got in. As he drove, he kept trying to make small talk, but I was super uncomfortable giving short, clipped responses. I was holding my phone when it lit up a notification. No sound, just a small vibration since it was on silent. I didn't even check it, but it seemed to irritate him. His weirdly upbeat attitude vanished, and he sternly ordered me to put my phone on the back seat. I was stunned and gave him a disbelieving look. When he didn't back down, I thought maybe I was being rude, so I started putting my bag, but he insisted, demanded really, that I put on the back seat. Alarmed by his intensity, I quietly said, "No, I'm fine," keeping my phone in my hand. He pulled out his own phone, turned it off, showed it to me and said, "See? Now put yours on the back seat." I ignored him, not knowing what else to say or do. We'd been driving for about 3 minutes, so I asked if we were close to the flat. He said yes. 2 more minutes passed, and I asked again, getting the same answer. I was getting really nervous. I asked if the woman in the other room would mind us visiting, hoping to find out if she'd be there. I didn't want to be alone with this guy in a flat. His face shifted to that same curious look, and after a pause, he said she wouldn't mind. Nothing blatantly suspicious had happened yet, but I was overwhelmed by a sinking sense of dread. Something about this man just felt wrong. That feeling was confirmed when he reached over and caressed my hand. I flinched away, startled, and finally mustered the courage to ask him to stop the car. Instead of stopping, he put a firm hand on my thigh and told me to calm down. Panic surged, but I tried to stay composed and asked again for him to stop. He ignored me and kept trying to touch me. I was freaking out, thinking I might have to jump out of the car, because God knows where this creep was taking me. The car was old, from the 80s, with manual locks. I checked my door. It was unlocked. We were approaching an intersection with a stop sign, where he'd have to slow down almost to a stop. I saw my chance. As we slowed, I was still fending off his hand. My phone started vibrating, and I glanced at the screen. At first, I was confused, but then sheer terror hit me when I saw the caller's name. Meaty Rent. For a split second, I was paralyzed by the chilling realization that this guy wasn't who I thought he was. He likely figured out I mistook him for someone else, but played along to keep me in his car. The car had slowed enough. Snapping out of my shock, I flung the door open and bolted like my life depended on it. I ran out of pure fear, only slowing to a walk when I looked back and saw he hadn't gotten out. He just sat there for a moment before slowly driving away. I made it back to the supermarket and met the real Meaty. I called my gym manager friend while running, and we waited for her to arrive. I wasn't going anywhere alone with anyone after that. We saw the flat, which was a dump, nothing like the pictures, so I went home, still shaken and with no hope of finding a flatmate. This happened yesterday, and I still panic when I think about what that guy might have had planned. I think it's time I learned to say no and stop being so damn naive. My childhood home was a gray stucco house on a 2-acre lot, built in 1917. My mom once met an 80-year-old woman who said that when she was a kid, our house was known as the neighborhood's haunted house. Kids often make up stories like that. But the longer we lived there, the more we wondered if there was some truth to those rumors. We spent about 16 years in that house and had our share of creepy experiences. Some had logical explanations, but others just didn't add up. If you walked into the house, you'd see stairs to the second floor on your right and a door to the living room on your left. The living room connects to the dining room, which leads to the kitchen. From the kitchen, there's a small hallway on the right with 3 doors: Jason's room, the bathroom, and directly across from Jason's room, my brother Aaron's room. This story is about something that happened to Jason when he was around 13. One night, Jason couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, trying to get comfortable, but eventually gave up and just lay there, staring into the dark. Then he heard soft footsteps pattering somewhere in the house. At first, he thought it might be our dog or cat, or maybe just his imagination. But as he listened, the footsteps got louder, heavier, almost angry or frantic, and they were getting closer. He could hear them thudding through the living room, into the dining room, and the closer they got, the more the floor shook and the windows rattled. When the sound reached the kitchen, it stopped abruptly. Then it seemed to turn around and stomp back to the living room. The heavy thuds came pounding back into the kitchen, stopped again, and reversed. This pattern repeated about 3 times. Then once more, he heard the thing race back into the kitchen, but this time it didn't turn back. A shadow passed in front of his doorway and darted into the bathroom. Silence followed. Jason says his heart felt like it was about to explode as he stared wide-eyed into the darkness. Then he saw a shadow lean around the doorway, peering straight into his room, looking right at him. He couldn't make out a face or any clear features. As he stared, he realized the head was tilted at an odd angle, like it was floating sideways. He tried to scream, but nothing came out. Suddenly, the shadow zipped back into the living room, and everything went quiet again. Jason leapt out of bed, hyperventilating, and ran to Aaron's room, shaking him awake. Aaron said he hadn't heard anything, and neither had I or my mom, who were upstairs. Jason listened to music in Aaron's room until he could calm down. To this day, he doesn't like talking about it. My mom tried to rationalize it, suggesting maybe it was her checking on him that night, but none of us really buy that. The sounds, the way the thing moved, and how it looked, it all pointed to something else. I had my own weird experiences in that house over the years, but whatever it was seemed to go easier on me. This story still gives me chills every time I think about it.